Okay, so you were just walking right by the protest and you kind of just said, hey, those are my people.
Right, absolutely. Because I've been preaching the truth, realizing that this whole COVID situation is all bullshit. Let me mic up.
Oh, sorry, I'll just hold it.
Okay. Yeah, I just been realizing that this whole COVID thing has just been all bullshit. Propaganda, ways for them to continuously keep these borders closed. The whole lockdown just had a whole effect on our whole immune system, our whole health, and they just want us sick. And the perfect timing with this election coming up in November. And now, like, I'm an American citizen. I actually been stuck here in Canada since this whole situation has transpired. Yeah, so.
Okay, so you're seeing both sides of everything.
Right.
What do you think about Canadians' obsession with hating Trump? What do you think that's all about?
It's the propaganda. And I really think that I would advise people to use, for me, I didn't really know too much about politics, but what I seen was there was a couple of times there was headlines saying Trump said this, and after thoroughly investigating and watching the video or whatever it was, whatever media or content was being promoted, and I actually got to see what Trump was actually saying. It wasn't whatever the headlines were being pushed. So for me, I've never seen in America, honestly, in all my life, I've never seen, and not to put labels on it racist, but white media attack a white man so much.
Gee, what a breath of fresh air, and the kind of man on the street interview you would never see aired on the likes of CNN or MSNBC. After all, this particular American black man is one who questions the narrative of the mainstream media, and he's not the least bit shy when it comes to expressing support for President Trump. And that person, folks, is essentially the Democrat Party's worst nightmare. And joining me now to discuss this further is our newest Rebel contributor, Drea Humphrey. Welcome to Rebel Roundup, Drea.
Hey, happy to be here.
Oh, happy to have you, my friend. Drea, that was a fascinating interview you conducted with that man. And the more he spoke, the more I thought of that ludicrous quote by presidential wannabe Joe Biden, who told a black radio host in May that, quote, "You ain't black," end quote, should a black person vote for Trump rather than Biden. By the way, what are your thoughts on that, Drea?
Oh, I want a shirt that says "You ain't black" hashtag or something. I think, we had a good laugh in my family about that. And it's just how, honestly, I feel like it's almost racist to say that. It's like you're saying basically black people can't decide for themselves who they should vote for. It has to be just based on, the political narrative we're seeing in mainstream media and all of that stuff. So I just thought it was hilarious. And if I was an American, that would make me, be even further away from voting for him. So.
I think you're right, Dre. It was offensive to me on two fronts. One is that if I was an American black man hearing that, it is so paternalistic. And there's this, narrative you see in certain circles that is just, I find so deeply offensive if you're a black conservative or a black Republican. The derogatory term, he's an Oreo, black on the outside, white on the inside. The second thing, Drea, is that how dare the Democrat Party take ownership of the black demographic? This is the party of slavery. This is the party of segregation. This is the party of Jim Crow laws. I mean, how do they take that moral high ground in the first place?
When it comes to systemic racism, if there ever was an organization that encompasses that, it would be the Democratic Party. So, yeah, I don't know how that's happening. And Biden's comment, he also said ain't. He used the word ain't. So, yeah, don't even get me started on that.
Oh, I see where you're going. It was kind of like, I remember, I think 2 campaigns ago where Hillary Clinton was doing various promotional videos, and depending where she was, if it was in the South or the Midwest, she'd use a Midwest drawl or a Southern twang. And it was like, oh my goodness, it's kind of like, the Bob Hope line, when you're in New York, give them the Big Apple stuff. When you're in Chicago, give them the Windy City stuff. And I mean, it's laughable. But moving on from that individual you met, I also like the idea of him not buying what the mainstream media is delivering. One of his quotes was, do your own research, be informed. And I couldn't help but think how right he was, because here in Canada, regardless of race, if I totally and exclusively got my news from the CBC, I'd be a world-class ignoramus by now. So I thought that was really good that this person could see behind the curtain and notice the media spin that is being disseminated by the mainstream media in the United States.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, to put things in perspective, the first Black person I come across is an American who doesn't align with what we're being told constantly, every day from mainstream media. So what are the odds of that? That means there's a lot more. There's a lot more to be seen. And I think he was very brave for coming forward and saying it with such passion. But a lot of us are just the silent majority. And the message of doing your own research and you know, not just reading a headline and pressing share and stuff like that, it's a huge message that, you know, even in my own personal life, I've been trying to share with people too. It's so important.
Yeah, and you know, Drea, I also liked his honesty and his courage for calling out the Black Lives Matter movement. We know, I mean, of course, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, but we know as an organization, this is a group with ties to Marxist organizations, anarchists, and so on, Antifa even. And, you know, it's funny, Drea, when I cover some of these protests here in Toronto, one of the trendy signs you see by the demonstrators is silence is violence, or it's modified to say white silence is violence, meaning that if you don't speak out about the injustice, then you are one of the problems bringing about the injustice. Yet the funny thing is, my friend, it's not that they want you to opine on the whole Black Lives Matter situation if it's off script. Like he said, if you look in Chicago, the number of young Black men who are dying at the hands of other young Black men, it's off the charts compared to the number of Black men being killed by white members of law enforcement. So it's kind of like silence is violence, but when you break your silence, you better damn well be on point, or else we'll shut you down too, because they're not interested in free speech either, are they?
Well, you know, if you just go try something, if you try to Google statistics on, you know, how many Black Americans are dying from police versus from other Black Americans, good luck. You're going to have to go down to, I don't know how many pages, because it's going to be so filled with George Floyd. And the internet has just been flooded. It took me a very long time to come across actual statistics. And what I saw was, we've got a plane going by, but last year, I believe it was 9 unarmed Black Americans were shot by a police officer. And there's different circumstances within that as to why. And, you know, obviously those need to be investigated. And if they were unlawful, the officer needs to be prosecuted. But you would think from all the headlines and all the stories and the global reaction that it's like you go outside and you're Black and you get shot by a cop like every single day.
Indeed, the numbers aren't there, and the solution is preposterous. Exit question, Drea. One of the common things that Black Lives Matter campaigns for now is defund or even abolish the police. Tell me, how does that help the plight of a law-abiding Black family, or any family for that matter? The idea that there's no cops to go to when the bullies and the thugs of the world are exerting force on you.
You know, I don't know about you, but I feel much safer being able to call 911 when something goes down. So I think that it is absurd, really. And I've actually had some officers reach out to me, and you know, they have really good ideas on how you could actually prevent police brutality. So they don't want it either, for the most part. And they're being left out of the movement completely. The frontline officers who are able to say, this is where we need help, this is why this is happening, they're being shut out of the movement. And they had great ideas like, you know, not completely defunding, but maybe transferring some of the funds from traffic violations over to other departments that could use them more, like cold cases. And so that's kind of a theme that I'm seeing. And then the other thing that I'm seeing is if we actually are trying to prevent police brutality, from what I'm getting from them, is that we would actually need more funding. We would need more training, especially, which is one of the most expensive things that they have going or that they would need. So it makes no sense to me. And the more that I look into it, the more that I feel like, yeah, we're going in the complete opposite direction. And I don't know what the alternative is to losing a vast amount of police officers from cutback.
Indeed, Drea, well said. And I think that if anything, this shows the ideological roots of Black Lives Matter in terms of being Marxist, in terms of being anarchist. They're all about tearing things down. They're not about contributing to any kind of concrete solution to make Black lives or anyone else's life better and safer. So excellent interview on the street, Drea. I look forward, I'm sure our audience does, to more of your videos. And thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks, everybody. Ciao.
Yes, folks, here at Rebel News, we endeavor to bring you the other side of the story, but there are people that don't want the other side of the story to be told. Therefore, please go to journalistdefensefund.com. That's journalistdefensefund.com. And if you can, kindly make a donation.